and welcome to Wide Angle this week. We're in conversation with Congress leader Salman Khurshid on his new book titled Triple Talaq, Examining Faith. Mr. Khurshid, of course, was amicus curiae in the Triple Talaq hearings when he explained to the court that he had something to say, and the court decided to take his comments as well on board at the time of the hearings in the summer of 2017. Subsequently, Mr. Khurshid has also spoken out quite strongly against the Triple Talaq bill as it was presented in Parliament at the end of 2017. So thanks very much for giving us some of your time. Your book that you have just released is an explanation of the concept as you understand it, of what Triple Talaq is, what we understand, the layperson understands it to be and should not understand it to be. But just for the sake of our viewers, can you tell us why you chose to write this book, what you were trying to explain?
As you can see, it's a matter of interest to a lot of people from different points of view. But for me, the real concern was that people had imagined it to be or assumed it to be something that it wasn't. And the moment you speak about saying something that sounds defensive or in defense of any form of talaq, triple talaq included, people think that you're advocating triple talaq. So my answer was, I'm not advocating triple talaq, I'm against triple talaq. But I'm against triple talaq only to this extent that I believe triple talaq is not a valid form of talaq in Islam, and which is what I wanted to urge the court, and I did. But more than what I was hoping to secure from the court, I believe that it's important that this be better understood amongst ordinary people, and the attempt to demonize a community because they have this somewhat unacceptable kind of divorce, which is assumed to be unilateral, cruel, heartless, etc. We had to put that in right perspective. You may still not like it, you may approve of it, you may disapprove of it, but at least you should know what the truth is.
So, sir, a couple of questions, because when the Supreme Court announced its decision last summer, there was a great amount of relief for a lot of people who'd been saying this is against women, it should be taken away, I mean this right should be taken away, it's illegal. The court seemed to indicate that yes, they believed that triple talaq had no role in the way Islam is practiced, and Parliament should decide what to do in terms of making it formally illegal, criminal, etc. That's the way we understood it as people who talk about women's rights. That's the way we understood. We said it's something to actually celebrate. The court's verdict was actually something to celebrate at the time.
Well, I was happy to celebrate as well, and I was pleased to see women come on television to celebrate. But it became apparent within minutes of somebody celebrating, it became apparent that they didn't know where to go from there. And that's the reason why it was important that I write this book. Just going back to what you said, what does the court finally decide? Let's not forget that the court had 3 separate judgments. The Chief Justice, who was supported by 1 judge, said that triple talaq is part of Islam for 1400 years and it's a fundamental right and we cannot therefore interfere in it. However, we can ask Parliament to do something about it, and therefore for 6 months we'll suspend it and then ask Parliament to act within 6 months. And this was done because the Personal Law Board that was there to defend triple talaq had made this concession to court. This was the first judgment that was announced, but that's only 2 judges. The 3rd judgment that came was Justice Kurian Joseph, who said there is no such thing as triple talaq in Islam. There's an aberration, historical aberration, but there is no consistent triple talaq in Islam, and he read through the Quran to show that there is no such thing as triple talaq, and also supported it by saying that nowhere in the world, no Islamic country permits triple talaq. So for him, there was no triple talaq at all. The 3rd judgment was Justice Rohington Nariman, supported again by Justice U. Lalit, who said that triple talaq is part of Islam. We've known it to be part of Islam, and that's why it's got incorporated into our regular law, the normal law of the land. However, this is violative of constitutional principles, therefore we strike it down. But in this, there is one important factor. When you talk about women's rights, I think you have to look at a larger picture. Women's rights should be talking about talaq. Forget about triple talaq. What is worse about triple talaq than talaq is only this, that triple talaq takes away the man's right to pronounce talaq and take it back within 3 months, which is the period of waiting, the probation or iddat. So if man says triple talaq, 1, 2, 3, he cannot take it back. If the man says talaq once or even twice, he can take it back. Now, if it's the man who's giving up his right, how is the woman involved? The woman can only complain about talaq. Let's not have talaq. Now that's a larger question. No woman that came to court said, I'm against talaq. They only said they were against triple talaq. And in order to understand what talaq is and how fair it is, if it is all fair, is to look at the right that women have in Islam to get out of a marriage, khula. A woman has an equal right as a man to get out of a marriage simply by saying, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. Of course, she requires adjudication, which is a qazi or a family judge, to accept what she is saying and say, fine, you are now free.
So, just a couple of questions. You know, in your first answer, you sort of pointed out how this was possibly being used to demonize one particular community, the Muslims in the country. Now, there is also an while that's taken on board, there's also an argument that in a country like ours, with a population of 1.2 billion, so many castes, religions, creeds, etc., perhaps it is time to bring some sort of uniformity when it comes to things like this. Isn't that something that we should be thinking about? I mean,
no problem. No problem. No problem. We have it already. We have the Special Marriages Act. It's an option. Anybody who wants to opt out of their religious structures and go to the normal, what you might call secular law of the land, they have the Special Marriages Act available, in which case their religious principles will not apply. The point is, you want the Uniform Civil Code, must say that we want a Uniform Civil Code and must defend it as a Uniform Civil Code. A Muslim marriage, there is something called meher. A meher is an amount that a man has to offer for marriage. It's a contract, and you have to offer something to a woman to say, this is my offering, will you accept it and be my wife? Now, this is not available in Christianity, this is not available in Hinduism, this is not available in Sikhism. Now, would you, when you say Uniform Civil Code, introduce the concept of meher and the right of the woman to say yes or no in the presence of 2 witnesses, would you introduce that into the other 3 religions as well? Big question. People seem to assume that they have some perfect system of marriage and divorce which they will impose on every religion, and that every religion is imperfect and therefore must give way to what their idea of divorce and marriage is.
So, sir, tell me something. If it's all as you say it is, why are you also at odds with your own party on the bill? I mean, when the ruling government tabled the bill in the Lok Sabha, there was a huge ruckus, there was many people who opposed it, but broadly there was a sense that the Congress was on board with it, with some tweaking, fine-tuning, things like that. What happened? And you were at odds with many of your own party colleagues as well.
Well, with great respect, let me just say this, that it happened in a hurry. This was introduced virtually overnight. Not everybody was clear about it, including people who are intelligent and are well-read were not very clear about it. We had a short discussion. Some of our colleagues got together. We had a short discussion to brief the Congress President, and we found that there was great disparity in our positions. And I begged everyone to read the judgment a little carefully and understand a little bit more about the talaq system in Islam before we take positions. But unfortunately, there wasn't enough time. By the time we got to the Rajya Sabha, I think we understood the entire thing a little better, and there were many other parties willing to oppose what had happened with the bill. And so we were seen as taking a U-turn. It wasn't a U-turn. I think all it was a more considered opinion that we were able to put together, having seen what happened in Lok Sabha and having then considered seriously what the implications of all this will be. The bottom line, which everyone agrees upon, is that you should not criminalize triple talaq. Now, for me, there are three things. One, if there is no triple talaq, then how can you punish anyone for saying triple talaq? Court has finished it. Parliament now is trying once again to revive triple talaq and then invalidate it and in the process punish somebody. If there is no triple talaq, then what are you punishing a person for? One. Two, you have to be extremely careful about intruding into the family, intruding into the bedroom with criminality, with criminal law, unless there is a high urgency and need for it. No data has ever been made available that triple talaq is such a problem. Three, now people said, what happens if triple talaq, man has to look after the woman, etc. How will he look after the woman? And this was ridiculed by the Prime Minister, saying, every time you murder somebody, who looks after your wife when you go to jail? Or if Hindu men marry twice, they go to jail, who looks after the wife? This is rubbish. None of this has anything to do with a fundamental legal obligation that's being imposed upon you for the very reason that you have done something wrong. You've done a murder, it doesn't say that you will get life sentence, but you'll also get an obligation to pay for your wife. It doesn't say that. This is what it's saying here. Finally, and the last thing that's completely lost sight of, and I'm sorry that my party lost sight of it as well, was 1986 legislation in which Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, which is treated as legislation which is regressive against Shah Bano, but Mr. Rajiv Gandhi in that legislation has ensured that in the iddat period of 3 months, not only would the woman get maintenance, sustenance, and provision of home, but there would be special provision made for her within the 3 months, which the Supreme Court has interpreted as a one-time alimony. Now, if one-time alimony is what a woman gets under the 1986 Act, and all the woman gets under this latest legislation is a sustenance allowance, then who is for the woman and who is against the woman is for any simple person to work out.
But so I think the larger question here is that in the state of politics as it's being played out today, women are just sort of being bounced around as, a group to be appeased, a group to be protected, rather than empowered. The BJP is tabling this bill and, coming across as what they call the protector of the modern Indian woman or the Indian woman, as the case may be. The Congress is seen as not having its act together when you support the bill in one house and oppose it in another house. And, women are sort of out there saying, what's going on? I mean, nobody is listening to us. Nobody's asking us what we want. You have all these
So let's ask women, do they want talaq or they want it abolished? Let's ask women. And if they abolish talaq, will they have to abolish khula as well? Do women want divorce that takes 20 years, or do women want divorce that is reasonable, within a reasonable time? Let's ask women. Let's ask women, what do they actually want upon divorce or likelihood of divorce? Why don't women all say, irrespective of being Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Sikh or whatever, if we are divorced and we are destitute, the state must look after us.
But so I think the larger question is, apart from, you mentioned the Special Marriage Act, and of course that's there and that's valid, but isn't it time to just rethink personal law like this? I mean, you don't think it's time for that?
Why should you rethink personal law if there is a community that says that adoption for them has to be under certain conditions? Why should we want to change those conditions? Unless it violates our moral sense of constitutional morality, unless there is direct violation of constitutional values. And what are constitutional values? We'll also have to debate and discuss those. We've just got a law given to us by the Supreme Court on the right to privacy. Now, a lot of people believe that privacy is not something that you should have. A lot of people believe that same-sex relationships you shouldn't have, right? But the court is moving towards permitting you greater autonomy. Now, if you're going to be permitted greater autonomy in sexual relationships, why should you not have greater autonomy in deciding what kind of life you want to live? But you must have an escape route. You must have an exit route, and which is the Special Marriages Act, which says your option, you can opt out, you can move out and go. I believe anybody who wants to talk about a modern marriage and divorce system cannot but rely upon Islamic system that has been made available 1400 years ago.
But sir, when you're saying that you have the opt-out option, so to speak, there might not be people who necessarily want to opt out, but when you look at the members of the Muslim Personal Law Board who are standing in the courtroom and talking about how this is wrong, that this bill cannot be brought in, the optics just don't seem right as well, because where are the women who are saying no, we don't want this bill?
Well, let's bring the women forward. I mean, let's bring the women forward. I don't know if women have actually supported the BJP legislation. I don't know. I mean, and frankly, somebody who produced 4 people covered in a burqa saying these are women who are supporting us, I'm not quite sure that they are Muslim women. They are Muslim women who are willing to speak. And I have the greatest regard for Muslim women who stand up and say, this is what we want. But has any Muslim woman stood up and said, the divorce law itself should be scrapped? Is there any Hindu woman that can say that my divorce law is better than your divorce law? Why don't you adopt it? Where is the real debate? You can't just create a phantom.
So why doesn't the Congress party initiate that debate?
Well, I hope that the Congress will. I mean,
it hasn't.
It hasn't, because these are difficult areas, and you've obviously in this conversation must have realized that many of these areas a lot of people don't even know about. How many people in India know that women have a right, Muslim women have a right of a khola?
So are you saying that this issue really is something that's become a political tool in a sense?
It's been made. It's not become. It's been made. And I would be the sorriest if we play into the hands of the BJP. I do understand that tackling the BJP is a difficult job, because they first give a dog a bad name and then they hang the dog. And you stand up and say this is wrong, they say this guy should hang also along with the dog. So it's important for us to educate people, it's important for us to know the truth ourselves and then have the confidence to speak that truth, and ultimately truth will prevail. So
sir, if we're saying that it's about demonizing a particular community, we'll just shift tracks a little bit for a minute if you don't mind to a political question, demonizing the community, and that it has become this political tool that's being made into a political tool. You also have a situation where, I mean, as we speak, the Prime Minister has been in Palestine, in the UAE. He's made outreach to the Muslim world, Jordan before that, he's gone to Saudi Arabia. There is this mixed messaging that's also going on as far as...
It's compulsion, it's reality. When he gets out of the country and he goes to the world, he realizes that there's a huge segment of the world that he can't do without. If he could, he would have done happily. But he realizes that he wants to move into Israel. He's not the first one to have improved relations with Israel. We started improving relations with Israel because Israel can be a very important partner in supply of weaponry. But we also had a strong position on Palestine. He first gave an impression that he was dumping Palestine, and he's realized that he can't dump Palestine. Therefore, he's back with the Arab world, he's back with Palestine. He's told the Israelis that we will not be able to vote for you, but please don't raise that as an issue. Now, if that is his ability to keep both sides together, we are not going to complain about it. But whatever he does in Palestine or in UAE or in Saudi Arabia, I don't see him doing it in India. I don't see him going to Nadwa. I don't see him going to Ajmer Sharif or rebuking the chief minister or anybody else who says that Taj is not an Islamic contribution to Indian history. I never see him or hear him rebuking them. So if he's going to play in two different styles, one for the world and one for domestic politics, it's not going to last long. People are not as silly. as he thinks them to be.
But clearly, the way he's playing domestic politics, there is a constituency he's reaching, and they're loud, vocal on social media.
Of course he is. But what was happening a year ago or 2 years ago, and what is happening today, and what is happening today? There was a time when he mixed promise of a better economy with a promise of a different social system in the country. People are not, hungry people are not going to fight against a social system that has sustained them for 50 years. But they will certainly fight anything if they are told that they'll have something in their belly. But I agree that he has the ability to twist things around, and his party has the ability to twist things around, to be able to, in a not so subtle manner, send out messages which are of a divisive nature, which is what all the lynchings are about, which is all those statements made by ministers about people going off to Pakistan and people being kicked out and people having to change their lifestyles and so on, and what they eat and what they dress and who they love and who they have a relationship with. All those things are the ones that are going to finally hurt him. I have faith that this is a secular country. I have faith that this is a liberal country. I have faith that this country will finally not succumb to the kind of poison that's being planted.
So their argument is that this poison has not been planted by us. The Congress has been doing appeasement politics, quote unquote, for a long time and dividing people like that.
Well, so no appeasement now? No appeasement? No appeasement means that you don't give somebody something that he does not or she does not deserve. Agreed, no problem. But no appeasement doesn't mean that you slaughter them in the streets. Now, if it is the right, what happens is the victims who are then further victimized by the police. Look at what's happening in UP. Now, the problem is if we seek the truth and if we seek justice, that itself is seen as a demand for appeasement. And that's why very sensibly people are saying, let's take up the causes where their false idea of appeasement will not work. And I think the strong movement in the country to protect the rights of Dalits, who are today at the forefront of victimization by this government, the fight for the Dalits is a fight that will grow into a fight for justice for all communities.
But so how will it grow when the opposition is seen as disorganized and weak?
I think we are getting our act together. I think what happened in Gujarat must be seen as a major fillip, that we've taken some strides. Nobody is taking us lightly now after Gujarat. But Gujarat was not enough. I mean, we got to a point, but we couldn't get beyond. Now, I think the challenges in Karnataka, the challenges in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh are enormous, and we have to be fit to be fighting a battle there. And if we are able to turn those states around, I think we've got a game going.
And the fight, of course, is only just beginning.
The fight is just beginning.
Salman Khurshid, thank you very much for speaking to Wide Angle. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.